Yeah, Alex, I'm just going to read to you.
Anyway, let's get to now that we went through this, and I'll give you more updates throughout the day with the Michigan Democratic Party. Okay. But it does matter. What is this? It's mattering. Who do you like? Who do you love the most? Who are you not? Who you aren't? Wait, what? Okay. Donald Trump. Let's get situation monitoring for a little bit. Not monitoring the situation at the Michigan Democratic Party, but monitoring the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, the most important 21-mile strait that the entire world is locked in on. Okay? Now, there was supposed to be a ceasefire that was being worked on. J.D. Vance went to Islamabad with the American coalition, and they came back out of that with some disagreements and some points of agreement. And it was supposed to be a move in the right direction, that the Strait of Hormuz would be open for business again with, some tolling restrictions that Iran had implemented, and the American blockade was supposed to end. But the problem is, and I see this more often than not by a lot of analysts that have identified the problem with Trump's side on this issue, is that Trump automatically considers any negotiation to be a point of weakness for the opposition. Trump has been begging for a negotiation to take place since like week 2 of Operation Epstein's Fury. But the very fact that Iran said yes to that negotiation in Islamabad, Trump misunderstood as weakness. Although Iran obviously still holds the cards because of the situation on the ground, Donald Trump looked at Iran's willingness to come to the fucking ceasefire negotiations table as a point of weakness, and tried to tweet out maximalist demands, which frustrated Iran deeply. And not only did he tweet out maximalist demands that were not discussed on the bargaining table in the negotiations process, but also he continued to implement this blockade outside of the Iranian toll system, rendering the negotiations fruitless. This was obviously very frustrating for the Iranian side, who thought that they had a fucking deal. And since then, some new updates have taken place.
We are back.
One of the updates is that seemingly the American Navy has taken an Iranian flag cargo ship into custody after it tried to go through the American blockade. Okay? So there is a reality taking shape in the Strait of Hormuz, and then there's a reality in Trump's mind, which is chaotic and not exactly close to what the realities on the ground are. But this is the latest update. Iran warns of significantly greater costs if war resumes. From Dropsite News, a senior Iranian official with direct access to Tehran's internal deliberations told Dropsite that if Trump resumes bombing, Iran will cut off all diplomatic channels and focus entirely on fighting, and that conditions for any future deal will be far harder. He also told Dropsite, our assessment is that Trump effectively lacks both a coherent plan and the capacity to secure even a temporary agreement. His decision-making appears to be grounded in Israeli political and security assessments conveyed to him on a daily basis. There hasn't been any real progress. Both sides are just signaling behind the scenes that they're open to reaching an agreement. The Islamabad negotiations provide President Trump with an appropriate opportunity to exit the war. Should he nevertheless choose to continue the conflict, Iran will, for a prolonged period, suspend diplomatic channels and will seek, within the context of the conflict, to impose significantly greater costs on United States interests. The official also specified that Iran is offering, on enrichment, a voluntary suspension for less than 5 years, an offer that originated in Geneva before the war, put forward solely to demonstrate goodwill and the necessary degree of flexibility. On the Iran uranium stockpile, Iran rejected transferring its highly enriched uranium to the U.S., but is offering to dilute it with a transparent mechanism to fully verify the process. On the broader nuclear framework, low-level enrichment for peaceful purposes, centered on medical research and energy applications with full transparency. On the overall deal, Iran wants a comprehensive agreement that includes firm non-aggression guarantees from both the U.S. and Israel, a demand the official acknowledged seems nearly impossible to guarantee, plus sanctions relief and a long-term framework. The official stressed these are essentially the same positions Iran had on the table in Geneva in February before the war started, suggesting that the war achieved nothing for Washington that wasn't already available diplomatically. Iran is also in parallel talks with friendly nations, including nuclear powers, aimed at establishing a balance of power with the United States and Israel, the official said. The reference to nuclear powers points towards Russia and China, both of which have opposed the U.S.-Israeli war and voted against Washington's UN Security Council resolution on the conflict. So that's where Iran is at right now. They are warning that they are ready to go back to a militant posture against the United States of America if America strikes first. If you recall, this wasn't exactly a favorable posture for America and its allies in the region, which is precisely the reason why America was begging for a negotiations process to take place in Islamabad after pretty much week 2. So what's insane about this situation is Trump, on the one hand, recognizes the need for a diplomatic end to this war. But on the other hand, anytime the Iranian side agrees to a diplomatic end to this war, Trump perceives that as fucking weakness. You cannot keep violating the international law, says Reza Amiri Moghadam, the ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran to Pakistan, one of the people who played a role in setting up these talks. He says, you cannot keep violating the international law, double down on your blockade, threaten Iran with further war crimes, insist on unreasonable demands, pace out with rhetorics, and pretend to be pursuing diplomacy. As long as the naval blockade remains, fault lines remain. Donald Trump has now taken more aggressive military action against Iran. Let's take a look.
For some breaking news, this thanks to the president having posted on Truth Social that there was some activity relative to the U.S. blockade there in the Strait of Hormuz. Apparently, a U.S. Navy ship has commandeered an Iranian ship. Akayla, what do you know about this?
Yeah, Alex, I'm just going to read to you some of the president's Truth Social. He says, today, an Iranian-flagged cargo ship named Tusaka, nearly 900 feet long and weighing almost as much as an aircraft carrier, tried to get past our naval blockade, and it did not go well for them. He says the U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer actually intercepted that ship in the Gulf of Oman and gave them a fair warning to stop. He goes on to say the Iranian crew refused to listen, so our Navy ship stopped them right in their tracks by blowing a hole in their engine room. Right now, U.S. Marines have custody of the vessel, he says, and the ship is under U.S. Treasury sanctions, he's claiming, because of their prior history of illegal activity. And he says we have full custody of the ship. And I want to say that the U.S. military has largely talked about some of these tactics that they intend to either board ships or fire at them. That seems to have been the case here with this ship, Tosaka. But there have been some reports that some vessels linked to Iran have been able to get past this blockade undetected. We have not independently verified those reports, but President Trump certainly touting here the continuation of this blockade, which has caused such tension with Iran after they sought to reopen the strait, but President Trump promised to keep this blockade going. Alex.
And in fact, to your point, as you've read, the ship is now in custody of U.S. Marines after the U.S. blew a hole in the engine room. Okay, we will see as more comes from this. Thank you so much for updating us from the White House, Kayla Gardner.
Since then, Trump has also threatened to blow up the entire country, and is posturing as though he doesn't want any negotiations whatsoever. Now, what's interesting about this is that is the Israeli position. But what's also doubly interesting about that is that whenever Trump talks about blowing up Iran and like ending Iranian civilization, well, oftentimes that means he really wants to do a negotiation, right? That's just like the Trumpian method. The Trump method is saying the most unhinged thing possible and then behind closed doors try to come to the table with a negotiations process. I mean, that's literally what has happened every single time. The other Trump method, of course, is also to do negotiations and then engage in the act of perfidy. Iran's IRNA says Iran rejected taking part in the second round of the talks with the U.S. Iran stated that its absence from the second round of talks stems from what it's called Washington's excessive demands, unrealistic expectations, constant shifts in stance, repeated contradictions, and ongoing naval blockade, which it considers a breach of the ceasefire. This, again, stems from the fact that Donald Trump is inconsistent and also doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever, which is, I guess, a part of his method here. But it's frustrating when it's not just his statements that don't make any sense, but it's his actions that also don't make any sense. Statements alone would not sully this deal. Okay? What is actually harming the negotiations process is two things. One, Trump's willingness to obviously lean into whatever the fuck Benjamin Netanyahu's demands are, which is obviously to destroy this deal and then destroy Iran, get America to invade Iran militarily, boost on the ground military warfare. But the other problem here is also Trump is still abiding by the ridiculous conditions that he's set forward and not scaling back on that, which includes the double block that they are trying to engage in. CENTCOM publishes video of them firing the guided missile destroyer USS Spruance 5-inch MK-45 gun into Tuska's engine room after it failed to comply with repeated warnings over a 6-hour period.
Motor Vessel Toska, vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire. Okay, we gave the flare. Now we're
I like that they were acting like they were frustrated when Iran was doing this shit. They were like, this is illegal. How dare Iran do stuff like this? And now they're doing the exact same shit. Muslims are terrorists and deserve everything that happens to them, says Jan 501737. I like that we were just watching the Americans engage in the same things that these guys will freak out when Muslims do, right? Breaking. Iranian forces thwarted U.S. attempt to attack Iranian commercial ship, Iranian state-linked media says. We just watched the video, yes. So, U.S. Navy fires on Iranian cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman. There are competing accounts, says DropSite. The U.S. and Iran are offering conflicting accounts of an incident Sunday involving an Iranian vessel in the Gulf of Oman as the ceasefire teeters on the edge of collapse. President Trump said the USS Spruance intercepted the Iranian-flagged cargo ship Tuska, nearly 900 feet long, after it attempted to breach the U.S. naval blockade. He said the Iranian crew refused orders to stop so that the Navy blew a hole in its engine room. U.S. Marines have taken custody of the vessel, Trump said, adding to the Tuska is under U.S. Treasury sanctions for prior illegal activity. Iran's Mehr news agency reported it differently. IRGC Navy Rapid Reaction Forces responded to U.S. forces opening fire on the Iranian commercial ship and said that American forces were forced to retreat and flee the area following the IRGC response. Iran did not name the commercial vessel. The incident, okay, this probably means that the American story is closer to the, is closer to the truth. The incident comes as 2-week ceasefire expires Tuesday, and a second round of talks remains unconfirmed. Iran has said it will not negotiate while the naval blockade remains in place. The U.S. has said the blockade will continue regardless. Yes, if America already has control over the boat, it's over. Then the Iranian side is not correct. But then again, they're just showing only video footage of us shooting at the vessel and not of us maintaining control over the vessel. So who knows? And maybe the Iranians are talking about a separate vessel. So we have here, we'll look at
here's one we did earlier.
Trump, and then we'll look at what the actual principal negotiators and their maximalist demands look like. Israel.
And showcasing how it's turned a shipping lane into a marina. Iranian TV broadcasting tankers halted in the Straits of Hormuz as radio traffic emerges of an Indian tanker attacked yesterday by Iranian forces.
HasanAbi, this is Motor Engafsan Marhedal. You gave me clearance to go. My name second on your list. You gave me clearance to go. You are fighting now. Let me turn back.
That action causing Trump to repeat his previous threat to Iran to bow to his peace demands. If they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. An old threat, of course, so far an empty one. It would also likely be a war crime of enormous proportions. A former Israeli military intelligence specialist on Iran says America doesn't begin to understand the country. Iran will not cave in and indeed is emerging ever stronger in all this.
They cope with the two strongest air forces in the world, and they managed to overcome. For them, it was winning but not losing. They still have the capacity to launch missiles and drones even today. They still hold the 440 kilos or 60% enriched uranium in Natanz and Isfahan. They still have the capacity to control the straits and actually control the artery of the international economy. So for them, yes, they suffered. They know they suffered. They're not stupid. But in terms strategically, they have the upper hand.
So, suits on for Vance, Witkoff and team. The US Vice President leading another delegation to Pakistan tomorrow for talks. But who with? Iran saying tonight they won't go whilst Trump is blockading their shipping.
Our policy is also step by step. Action. Commitment for commitment. They take one step, we take one step. It should not be the case that we fulfill our commitments while they do not.
Well, at least both sides are still communicating behind the scenes, leaving their bosses to do the posture and threat thing that both do so well. It all leaves Israel's Prime Minister looking friendless abroad, beleaguered at home. Tel Aviv last night and thousands out demanding a full inquiry into the Hamas invasion of October the 7th. Netanyahu, the clear target in all that. Up north today, anger at Israel's leaders of a different sort. The border town Kiryat Shimona in a shut-down protest at Netanyahu bowing to Trump's order to stop attacking Lebanon close by. And over that border, caught as ever in it all, Lebanese families slowly going home to the south. Very slowly. after Israel bombed bridges. And what will they find when they get home? A house or a pile of rubble?
Yes, the Iranians then announced in the last hour they're not going to those talks. Fed up, they say, and indicate with the mixed messaging they see coming from the White House and President Trump. Well, when you look at it, President Trump has tried violent and abusive language to persuade the Iranians the deal. Didn't work. He's tried to compliment them. Didn't work. He's tried to...
Who fucking cares about October 7th? Buddy, those people that are demanding an investigation to October 7 are some of the most consequential voters in Israel right now. They're not demanding an investigation into October 7 because they're like, oh, Benjamin Netanyahu didn't go hard enough. They're demanding an investigation into the, for example, the Hannibal doctrine that was implemented and what the security flaws look like. How much did the Benjamin Netanyahu cabinet know ahead of time before October 7 took place, and whether they allowed it to happen or not. Okay? That's not a bad thing at all. That's a good thing. And there should be more demands. Some of you motherfuckers literally see a good thing happening and just immediately cast it aside. It's good. It's good that they're demanding that. And also, the protesters are frustrated with the Netanyahu cabinet's actions in general. They're not demanding more militant action.
To threaten what certainly looked like an out-and-out genocide. It didn't work. He's tried today to threaten what certainly appears in the minds of many to constitute a war crime if it happened. It did not work. Then step back. This isn't really primarily about Iran, Straits of Hormuz, their search for a bomb. It's about the Palestinian question. And on that, we've seen the Israeli state with its American ally get involved in serious conflict in not one, not two, not three, but 4 regions. 5 if you include the West Bank. Why? To destroy Hamas. They've failed. To destroy Hezbollah. They failed. And to destroy the Iranian regime. They have failed. That regime in Tehran, yes, is violent and it is repressive. But tonight, with all that, you understand why they're perhaps thinking they've got quite a lot in the tank when it comes to...
We're back with the Fox News Alert. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Inks just speaking with President Trump and has the latest from Tel Aviv. Trey, what can you tell us and what did the president have to say?
Yeah, guys, good morning. I just spoke with President Trump for about 20 minutes, and he told me if Iran...
Holy shit, Trey got 20 minutes with the president? That's crazy. That's actually wild, man. He normally gives like, what, 2 minutes max? This assessment is important to also look at from Trita Parsi. Okay? Trita Parsi, speaking to several people involved in all sides, I believe I've gotten to the bottom of the story about Pezeshkian's video message and how Trump blew up a golden opportunity to de-escalate the war. Here's what happened. Regional efforts at de-escalation in the war had convinced Iran to gradually adjust its regional retaliation conduct. In a first step, the Iranian president, as the head of the Interim Leadership Council, announced that attacks on neighboring countries would cease as long as their territories wouldn't be used to attack Iran. This is why Pezeshkian issued that video statement, although he went further in a statement, but that's another matter. This is from March 7th. Hold on. Where's the other video? 1 second. Or not video. I clicked on the wrong link. This is what I was going to look at. He quote retweeted, Trita quote retweeted his own tweet. Okay. Here, this is what I was looking at. To understand how Trump is undermining his own diplomacy by quickly declaring victory and trying to humiliate Iran whenever Tehran takes a de-escalatory step, it is instructive to remember what happened when Iran and the GCC had negotiated new guardrails for the war. So the reason why I was looking at the other post is because it shows how Trump sees any kind of de-escalation from the Iranian side. Trump looks at Iran behaving as a sane regional actor and listening to the demands being made by the GCC, for example, as a sign of weakness. Okay? This is his calculation. Oh, they're retreating on this stuff. That means they're retreating because they're afraid. They're not retreating because they are behaving like a sovereign regional actor, listening to the demands being made by their neighbors. Okay? But instead, as a nation in retreat, terrified of the prospect of the might of American weapons destroying its infrastructure. In short, Iran and the GCC were in the process of agreeing to a deal that would see the end of Iranian attacks on the GCC as long as their territory ceased being used for attacks on Iran. Tehran would first message taking steps in this direction, followed by GCC's reciprocity. But before the GCC got a chance to respond, Trump declared victory on Truth Social, insulted and humiliated Iran, and even issued further threats of complete destruction. On top of that, U.S. and Israel also attacked water desalination plant at Keshem Island. Needless to say, this sabotaged the sensitive de-escalation talks, and a promising opening was destroyed. Trump's need for the optics of victory trumps what should be a far more important goal, advancing U.S. interests by ending this war and reaching a longer-term deal with Tehran. Okay? It appears that this same phenomenon occurred in the past few days when the Iranians, in a very vague tweet, declared that the strait is open as a de-escalatory step. In their terminology, it has never been closed, though Tehran is only determining who can pass and who cannot while charging tolls. Trump failed to reciprocate and instead could not resist the temptation to declare victory and insult the Iranians. What was designed to become the beginning of a mutual off-ramp was instead turned by Trump into an escalatory ladder, resulting in additional threats by him this morning to knock out every single power plant, every single bridge in Iran. Trump's lack of discipline and focus and his infantile prioritization of optics over reality are becoming a significant obstacle to him achieving his own goals, exiting the war and striking a strong deal with Tehran. This is not art of the deal. This is the art of self-sabotage, says Trita. The part that Trita is not mentioning, in my opinion, is that this suits the ultimate desires of Israel as well. Okay? That is the real issue here. Trump gets to behave in this inconsistent manner, and he gets to behave victory, and he gets to just be more belligerent and escalate, while simultaneously people in his orbit are actively reading the room and trying to de-escalate. Trump does this kind of thing because it suits Benjamin Netanyahu's goals. Decisions, David Klein says, decisions Israel made are quite clear, directly the reason why people around the world are paying more for food and for fuel, and everyone can see that, and everyone's mad about it. It's going to have lasting effects. He's talking to the deputy digital director of Bulwark Online, who is complaining about, the relationship between Israel and the Democrats and yada, 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 right? To which Matthew Petty responds, this future was clear as day to me by 2019 or 2020. The U.S. being physically incapable of saying no to Israeli ambitions meant that they were going to become everyone's problem at some point. And even the specific route, Iran war, was advertised quite loudly. The United States of America is openly saying Israel is bringing us into this, and we are waging this war for Israel, and we're continuing to destabilize for Israel as the rest of the world experiences inflationary shocks, experiences an energy crisis. What do you think this is going to do to American soft power and American influence around the globe? And what do you think this will do to the influence of Israel and the way that people perceive Israel around the world? That is a major problem that neither America nor Israel is invested in facing, okay? This goes back to the same mentality. This goes back to the same frustrating reality that I have observed. 800 military bases turning into 800 separate military invasions. Okay? It's that simple. But let's take a look at what Trump's assessment is currently.
Does not sign this deal, the whole country is getting blown up. He went on to say that bridges and power plants will be targeted if Iran does not sign this agreement. The president telling me that U.S. Special Envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are heading to Islamabad, Pakistan for meetings on Tuesday, possibly into Wednesday, to try and get this agreement across the finish line. The president telling Fox News this is a very simple deal, but this is the last chance for the Iranians. The president very clear in our conversation that he is not making the same mistake that President Obama made, giving cash to the Iranians and allowing them to continue a nuclear program. The deal on the table is...
It's literally, I mean, I don't have an issue with unfreezing Iranian assets and sanctions relief. I think that's the just thing to do. That's the moral thing to do. But from Trump's perspective, this is a far, far more beneficial deal for the Iranian side than Barack Obama ever entertained. Larger amounts of dollars are being discussed to the tune of $20 billion, right? Which is a fraction of the $100 billion that we have frozen, but still a far larger percentage of the overall assets that were frozen by the United States of America than Barack Obama did, okay? So, and Joe Biden as well. Barack Obama was what? 1.7 billion. Joe Biden, 6 billion. Trump is talking about $20 billion. You know, if you're going to call one cold, hard cash in pallets being shipped over to Iran, well, then this is a much larger chunk of that cold, hard, green cash being shipped over in pallets to Iran.
To reopen the Strait of Hormuz to ensure that the Iranians do not have this highly enriched uranium that is buried deep underground after Operation Midnight Hammer last summer. And again, the president telling Fox News that the entire country will be blown up. Bridges and power plants will be targeted if the Iranians do not sign this agreement. This is a significant development because we are in this less than 72-hour window before the ceasefire between the United States and Iran expires. And the president has given the Iranians an opportunity for an off-ramp, an olive branch he is extending to the Iranian regime to avoid this region going back into war. And the president said the United States military is prepared. He said the U.S. has massive amounts of ammunition, even better munitions than they had in the opening days of Operation Epic Fury, to use against the Iranian regime, to target a variety of different positions across their country if they are not willing to make this good faith deal.
How?
And again, he tells Fox...
How is that possible? Did they rebuild the arsenal? With what, with what resources? With what runway? We know how long it takes. This is just, again, cope.
News that his special envoys are headed to the Middle East, and they are going to try and get this deal across the finish line. But this is in the hands of the Iranians, if they are willing to make a good faith agreement. And if they are not, the president has indicated there will be significant strikes against the Iranian regime in response if this diplomatic effort does not succeed. Guys?
Trey, in your conversation with the president, it hasn't been talked much about lately, but there has been focus on Karg Island because of its strategic proximity to 90% of the crude oil goes through there. Did the president raise, I know he's talked to you about bridges and power plants, but what about the oil infrastructure?
It takes weeks to reload missile cruisers. I mean, we're not even talking about reloading the missile cruisers. We're talking about rebuilding the missile stockpile. That takes years at times, especially if we're talking about standoff munitions that take a long ass time to make. We're talking about, in certain instances, with the current capabilities of U.S. procurement, 12 per year for like the THAADs, right? That is, you're not going to be able to make up for that that diminished stockpile in a matter of 1 week. It's just not going to happen.
Structure.
The president talked about the Strait of Hormuz and these violations of the ceasefire that were conducted by the Iranians yesterday. President Trump telling me about how...
Can you explain what unfrozen assets are? Sorry, I asked that already, but it was right as you got up. Yes. So Iran, like any other country, like an oil-rich country, sells oil and gas to other countries, right? Other countries that are under the control of U.S. empire. Countries like Korea, or even in certain instances like Qatar and many other places, right? So what America does after that shipment is cleared, after the money is supposed to exchange hands, is America will tell those other countries like Korea or Taiwan or many other places to freeze those assets. So that money never exchanges hands. That money is taken out of the bank accounts of South Korea, for example. And before that money makes its way to the Iranian bank accounts, it's frozen. America is currently sitting on, tens of billions, if not $100 billion worth of money that was supposed to be sent to Iranian bank accounts. Okay? So when the American government says we're unfreezing these assets, what they're basically saying is they're no longer stopping the transfer of these assets that they have currently frozen.
How they're using these small vessels to fire on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, but they're just using small ammunition. And despite the fact that they're not doing much damage, it's an indication that they are violating the ceasefire. And then the question...
Yes, technically, the money is Iranian money, okay? The money is supposed to be in the hands of the Iranian government. That's all this means. It's just that America has illegally exercised its awesome power around the globe as the hegemon to stop this transaction from being completed. So it's not in the hands of South Korea. It's not in the hands of Iran. The money has not exchanged hands. It's just America has stopped it from being delivered to Iran. America gets to do this because oil is traded on dollars, American dollars. Yes, all that takes place in this situation is oil has been extracted and shipped over to another country. Iran no longer has the oil. America now has frozen the money.
The question is, well, why are they not doing much damage? And that is because more than 150 Iranian vessels are currently at the bottom of the sea. During Operation Epic Fury, the United States hammered the Iranian Navy, and they had prepared for a possible confrontation with the United States, but not enough, because the U.S. was so successful in these strikes that much of the Navy vessels the Iranians had prepared were not able to be used. And that is the reason that they have to use these smaller vessels to threaten international shipping lanes. And again, this speaks to the success of Operation Epic Fury and just the inability of the Iranian regime to even respond and to violate the ceasefire in this manner. And so that is one of the key pillars of this broader agreement that President Trump is demanding the Iranian regime sign. They are going to keep open the Strait of Hormuz. They are going to release that highly enriched uranium that is buried deep underground in the aftermath of those U.S. strikes last summer. And they're going to stop threatening U.S. forces across the region, the president tells me, or the Iranians are going to pay a heavy price. And that price is going to come at their power plants, their bridges, and the remaining infrastructure belonging to the Iranian regime. The president said right now there is a divide between the hardliners and the more moderates within the Iranian political leadership that remains. Remember, in the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury, the United States and Israel took out the command structure of the Iranian regime. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, was taken out in an airstrike along with his top advisors. The Iranians were in disarray in these moments after Operation Epic Fury began because they...
Dude, Trey Yingst has become the biggest glazer of the Trump regime. Like, he is one of the most insane propagandists at this point. It is unbelievable how much he eats Trump's penis every time he talks. Okay? It's kind of crazy. Like, pretty much everything he said about the military successes, we all know was a failure. There was no real military goal that was achieved. And it's kind of insane the way he talks about this stuff. I thought you said you liked him. I mean, he's an interesting guy. He has been one of the lone voices that has actually criticized Israel from Israel about its targeting and slaughter of Palestinian journalists, but I guess this is his job here, is to be a stenographer for Trump. Yeah. The Hawks keep saying, we took out Iran's leadership. How could we be doing badly as if nothing happened since day one of the war? Yeah, it's just, you're not recognizing the events that have unfolded in the last 51 days and instead of the last 52 days. They keep saying over and over again, like, well, we killed Khamenei. We killed the leadership structure. And they were in a state of disarray. They were in a state of panic. It's like, okay, well, their Mosaic defense system was implemented instantly, and they haven't stopped pummeling both the GCC states and also Israel since that began. And they have control over the Strait of Hormuz.
Were hit even harder than anyone in the region believed they were going to be hit. And again, this speaks to the inability of the Iranians to not only defend their top leaders, but also defend their military structure. When we think about the threat Iran posed before Operation Epic Fury began, they were basically trying to get a nuclear weapon. They told negotiators they had enough highly enriched uranium for 11 nuclear bombs. And this was an indication to President Trump something had to be done to stop this regime from obtaining a nuclear weapon. But remember, you have this threat from the Iranians that also includes ballistic missiles and drones. And as part of Operation Epic...
Oh, Trey Inks was promoted the chief foreign correspondent. Maybe that's when he switched up his tune. I don't know. But this is not good reporting at all. This is just being a stenographer for Trump. You're not educating the Fox News viewership in any way, shape, or form. And he's also doubling down on the propaganda side where he's like, oh, Iran says they're weeks away from a nuclear weapon. They never said that. They've said the exact opposite. And they were unbelievably conciliatory to the demands that the American side was making, as not only the Iranian side has repeatedly conceded on those demands, especially as far as like developing a nuclear weapon, but the Omani Omani foreign minister came out on American television and literally said a day before America started its strikes through, once again, perfidy, that the Iranian side was totally willing to abide by the maximalist demands that the American side was making. So like every single thing that he's talking about is not only untrue, but also it directly contradicts observable reality. And it's also a rehashing of events that have already taken place from a totally ridiculous framework, a framework that just makes you believe that whatever Trump is saying is actually correct. Don't look at what's going on in the Strait. Don't look at what has taken place in Israel. Don't look at what's happened in the GCC states, and simply listen to Trump's words and Trump's framing.
Fury, President Trump ordered strikes against the production facilities of the Iranian regime, hammering their ballistic missile production centers and the drone centers.
This is also contradicted by not only additional reporting, but contradicted by the fact that, you know, Iran kept pummeling Israel and GCC states as well. But also there's new New York Times reporting that shows that I believe Iran has approximately 60% of its entire missile silos that are left intact. These strikes did not actually harm their missile launchers in the way that the American and the Israeli side has been claiming. I believe it's 60 or 70% that they still have in their stockpile, and you know, even a larger percentage of their drones as well. So virtually everything he's saying is incorrect.
That were used to target U.S. forces and allies across the Middle East. And now President Trump tells me that bridges and power plants are back on the target list for the United States. And if Iran does...
By the way, they wouldn't be talking about missiles and or they wouldn't be talking about bridges and power plants if they were able to successfully destroy the Iranian missile cities that are deep underground. Okay? That is an admission of defeat. That is perhaps the greatest... Kaya, watch out. That's crazy. She's like standing right underneath me. Oh, what are you doing, lady? I'm gonna accidentally step on you. If they were capable of actually treating Iran's strike capabilities, if they were capable of destroying Iran's missile cities, they wouldn't be talking about bridges and power plants. They wouldn't be talking about hitting civilian targets, right? That is also another admission that they have not been able to accomplish their military goals at all.
Not signed this agreement in Islamabad this coming week. The president will order strikes, he tells me, against power plants and bridges inside of Iran. This will be a major escalation. But the president told me, and he is expected, we also learned in that conversation, to release basically a letter today to the Iranians with this tough talk, letting them know what is at risk for their regime if they do not make a good faith agreement. The president told me this tough talk is the only thing the Iranians understand. They don't understand the traditional diplomacy and dialogue of the region. They understand.
That's so funny. Brother, I've never heard someone be so oppositional to reality. It is literally the exact opposite, man. We are behaving like belligerent actors here. That is crazy. Not only has Iran... Oh my God, Kaya. No. That's crazy, Kaya. That is crazy. She literally was like, oh yeah, you don't want me to stand right behind you so that you can accidentally drive over me with your chair? I'm going to get even closer. But in any case, getting back to what Trey was saying here, or it's just, whatever Trump is saying that Trey is just repeating verbatim. It's insane to make this argument. This entire war started through perfidy when Iran was willing to concede on the American framework on enriched uranium. So it's not only incorrect, but it's incorrect in the most basic ways. It's directly at odds with what we have seen so far in the last 52 days.
Stand firepower. The firepower that belongs to the United States military. And President Trump again told me they have massive amounts of ammunition prepared. If the Iranians are not willing to make that good faith agreement, they are going to hammer the regime, targeting those bridges, power plants, and what is left of the IRGC.
Like saying we are going to target the bridges and the power plants while simultaneously saying Iran doesn't understand like normal diplomatic process that everybody else understands is so funny, because that's not how you do diplomacy. That's not how you do diplomacy at all. It's not only an admission that America has totally failed on achieving any of their fucking military objectives, which is to destroy these missile cities, destroy Iran's striking capabilities and the like, but it's also an admission that we, America, we are not the ones who are abiding by the normal negotiations process.
Military infrastructure. Guys.
Trey, you were on our show in an earlier hour before this phone call with the president, and you and I discussed this regime. You say that there's a faction, perhaps a more moderate versus a more radical wing of this regime. We don't know which one is in charge. Maybe you do. Maybe you can let us know. But if the more radical wing is in charge, per our discussion earlier, then that means they're crazy. And that means that this letter and this escalation may not have the results that we want, because they don't care. They're just like, fine, let it all go. This is existential. If, we're going to lose, so let's all just die and go to heaven, I guess, or hell. So did you discuss that with the president in terms of the mental state and the outcomes that the mullahs and the radical wing want?
Yes, and I can tell you, having talked to the president multiple times throughout this war and prior to this conflict, the president understands exactly who he's dealing with here. These are not traditional negotiators on the other side of the table. This is not a traditional regime. Even on our call today, President Trump brought up the protesters who were slaughtered in the streets of their country earlier this year. And the president multiple times said he would be there for them. And he targeted, actually, during Operation Epic Fury, many of the besieged force commanders and those responsible for the crackdown against Iranian demonstrators who were peacefully protesting in the streets of their country. But again, I think the fact the president continues to bring this up, he understands two things. He understands the Iranian population, more than 90 million people, and many of them are quietly supporting what President Trump is doing, pressuring a repressive regime that spent 47 years cracking down on their own people. But he also understands the negotiators, and he understands the break in who's actually calling the shots here. And it's a great question because even the Iranians are not clear on who is calling the shots. And while you have this divide between the hardliners and the more moderates, even the Iranians can't agree on their own position. We heard Iran's foreign minister late last week saying the Strait of Hormuz is open, and then IRGC commanders saying it's closed, and then yesterday firing on these vessels trying to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And again, this speaks to the successful U.S. strikes against the regime and the command structure of the IRGC. But as it relates to who is at the negotiating table now, the takeaways that I had from this 20-minute call with President Trump were quite clear. It doesn't matter to President Trump who is calling the shots in Iran right now. What matters is that they signed this agreement. And the president said if they do not sign the agreement, he is going to target Iranian power plants and bridges. He is going to increase the strikes against the IRGC and go after the core that remains within Iran. Because he told me this is a very simple agreement. It can be done in 10 minutes. They know what is on the table. All they have to do is...
Yeah. It kind of feels like we're going back to war. I mean, this is... I mean... I guess the only thing you can expect here is that Trump is inconsistent and his posture when he's on the phone or his posture when he's tweeting is entirely different than like what will end up taking shape on the battleground. But the key thing to remember is Trump is incredibly responsive to the markets. And the whole point of why America wanted Iran to come to the negotiations was because of the markets. Iran came to the negotiations table and the markets responded very positively to it. Trump likes that. It doesn't make any sense that they would just double down, triple down. Not exactly certain to, not exactly sure how this is going to be reflected on in a couple hours. Sunday after all. But Iran, Asina Tusi says, Iran closes Hormuz, Trump ignores it, then beseeches allies, then threatens and unleashes profanity-laced insults, then blockades it himself. Iran says it'll open after Lebanon ceasefire, only for Trump to double down on his blockade. Now it's closed again. Strategic incoherence. The whole point of this was to pry open the Strait of Hormuz because they can't do this militarily. Yeah, futures market in 20 minutes. So we'll see. 19 minutes. We'll see how Trump starts talking when that takes shape. But the situation is as follows. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed still, as it is currently, and the markets are not going to react positively to it, price of the barrels or oil futures are going to go up again. Barack Ravid says, here's the real beneficiaries of the deal. Here's the real principal negotiators. President Trump told me in a brief phone call that he is still optimistic about the upcoming round of negotiations with Iran and about the chance to reach the deal. But the Iranians believe that Trump's optimistic statements are a deception and a cover for a surprise American attack. I feel good about this. The concept of the deal is already closed. I think we have a very good chance to complete this, Trump told me in a brief conversation. The Iranians, on the other hand, are lowering expectations and even claiming there is no negotiation round with the U.S. this week. Iranian officials suspect that the U.S. might attack them even before the end of the ceasefire on Tuesday night. There are several signs indicating that the Iranian paranoia is justified. The sensitive security discussion that Trump convened in the White House Situation Room today, Sunday, the reinforcement of the U.S. military continues to pour into the Middle East, and the fact that so far it hasn't been announced when Vice President Vance is supposed to go to Pakistan. UAE to Trump administration, you started this war. If we run short of USDs as a result of it, either you will give us the USD swap lines, or we will be forced to start transacting oil and gas in CNY and other currencies. This is from the Wall Street Journal just now. Now, the UAE is the most pliant to Israeli demands. It's basically an extension of Israel, right? The United Arab Emirates. So if they're talking about Chinese yuan, okay, that's a fairly large threat. Okay, this is the dynamic taking shape in the region that I was talking about from basically not day two, but week 2 of Operation Epstein's Fury. The idea that like there's only so much punishment that these guys will abide by until they realize that maybe it's time for a different state that they will lean into for real stability. Yeah, prominent Emirati commentator Abdul Khaled Abdullah says it's time to think about closing U.S. bases, calling them a burden. Remember all those journals briefed by Emirati officials last month to be like, Iran has really messed up this time. The Gulf states will never let go now. Yeah. Now, this is nothing but a leak. Okay, this doesn't mean that they're actually going to follow through on this promise, right? Never underestimate the Emiratis' willingness to be servile to Western interests, okay? Trust me. If there's one thing you can fucking bet the house on, it's that the Emiratis will still be loyal servants to the Western interests, specifically to Israel, no matter how hard they flip their phones. But this is a direct, direct line of attack against American interests in the region. And the reason why it's being communicated through Western press is because they're saying, look, enough is enough. If you're reading this coming from any Emirati whatsoever, any commentator whatsoever, that means that the UAE wants Americans to hear this, okay? They want Americans to hear this publicly. Islamabad and Tehran, differences in negotiation. There's a fundamental... Vali Nasser, Araghchi's tweet reflected an understanding in Tehran, likely based on what they heard from Pakistan, that if they took a positive step by opening the Strait of Hormuz, U.S. would reciprocate by lifting the blockade. But Trump kept the blockade in place and through his many tweets suggested that Iran was surrendering on the nuclear issue. This has only fed Iranian suspicions about Trump and that Islamabad, like Geneva, is a diplomatic ruse before another military attack. The door to diplomacy is not closed, but it has now become considerably more difficult. Deliberately or not, Trump has undermined diplomacy and raised the likelihood of more war, right? There is a fundamental divergence of worldviews between Islamabad and Tehran that will eventually be the reason for a communication gap between the two. Islamabad believes that D.C. has to be fooled to get your way. Tehran believes D.C. has to be convinced by power of logic. Since 79, Tehran hasn't done much to fool D.C., and since 79, all Islamabad has done is fool D.C. These are two basically different approaches to foreign policy, and Islamabad thinks its way is the better way. Islamabad thinks its way is better because it has shown results again and again. The slow-moving, seemingly dumb Vogonic, I've never heard that word before, DC admin will always let itself be fooled by happily for short-term political gains, and Pakistan feeds them that. Can you really argue with this strategy? Yeah, I think the Iranian side is correct. And it doesn't really matter what Islamabad says. It doesn't really even matter what the moderates say. You want to know why? Because those who control the weapons are the ones who are making these decisions at the end of the day. And those who control the weapons are the hardliners. It's the IRGC. And their assessment is most likely the true assessment, the correct assessment, which is that America, until it withstands enough economic damage, enough economic punishment, enough of a military deterrence, America will not learn a valuable lesson here. A valuable lesson that Iran has to be reckoned with as a sovereign state, and that you have to have normal talks with Iran as you would any other country, as you would with another country that you respect. The only country that America respects, unfortunately for Iran, is the nation state of Israel. So, that's it. And the only way to change this dynamic, as I've said over and over again, is if there is sufficient pressure being applied to Washington, D.C. by allies, whether it be European allies, Asian allies, fuck it, Latin American allies if necessary, and also capital owners in general. They need to be making boss call after boss call. But the problem with capital owners and all of these other European allies is that, well, capital owners are, are much more independent and can make those conversations happen, can actually communicate their desires to the Trump administration, but they're probably being duped a little bit themselves by the fact that there is no more bombing, right? And as far as the European allies or the regional allies, whether it be the GCC or not, they are too afraid to say anything to America. They can't say anything to America whatsoever. So we just continue on the same trajectory that we've been on. Huh? Az var, evet. Bir tane verir misin? Evet, yine ver. Any gaming today? Potentially, yes.
Sign the dotted line. And so far, they've been unwilling to do so. And that is why President Trump told me that on Tuesday, U.S. Special Envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are headed back to the Middle East to try and get this deal across the finish line. And remember what we are looking at here. Now we understand. After this conversation with President Trump, I can tell you very clearly, we are looking at option A or option B. Option A is that the Iranians come to the table on Tuesday and they sign a good faith agreement that never allows them to have a nuclear weapon, that makes sure they give up their enriched uranium and ensures that they open the Strait of Hormuz. Option B is that their power plants and bridges are going to be destroyed by the U.S. military, the strongest military in the world. And so they have a decision to make. And the president was very clear just before we got off the call. He told me Iran has a decision to make. And the decision is either going to be an off-ramp that saves the lives of the leadership and the infrastructure of the country, or the alternative. And the president told me he is prepared for both options. And again, he is sending his negotiating team for one final.
This is so insane. Yeah, I mean, how do you deal with this? Like, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with a bully? How can you have a normal, sincere conversation with a bully that is choosing to extort you with threats of terrorism? It makes sense that the Iranian calculation here is just to say, fuck it. Then we go back. We go back to war. You have to punch back at that point, and with sufficient force that the bully retreats and thinks twice before ever doing this again, not just to you, but to everybody else. It makes total sense for the IRGC guys to look at the situation and be like, see, we fucking told you, there is no negotiating with these guys. Proof deterrence has not been established. I mean, no. Here's the problem. Deterrence has been established. For any normal country, deterrence has been established. The problem is America is not a normal country. Ask the GCC if deterrence has been established. Ask the European allies that have a total of 6 weeks of jet fuel remaining if deterrence has been established. Their calculation is very different.
Effort to try and get this deal across the finish line, but the president was very clear. He told me if they do not sign this deal, the whole country is going to get blown up.
Trey, it's Lucas. Great reporting. Vice President Vance led the negotiations last weekend in Islamabad. He is not going on this trip to Islamabad. Why do you think that is?
It's a great point, and I do want to just read something to you right here. As we are talking, the president has now posted on Truth Social about exactly what he told me during that conversation. He says, in part, Iran decided to fire bullets yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz, a total violation of our ceasefire agreement. Many of them were aimed at a French ship and a freighter from the United Kingdom. The president goes on to say, that wasn't nice, was it? My representatives are going to Islamabad, Pakistan, confirming what he told me on the phone earlier. They will be there tomorrow evening for negotiations. Iran recently announced that they were closing the strait, which is strange because our blockade has already closed it. The president goes on to say in his post, they're helping us without knowing. And they are the ones that lose with the closed passage, $500 million a day. Now, it's a very long post on Truth Social, and we'll pull it up here. But the president later says, no more Mr. Nice Guy. They will come down fast. He's talking about the bridges and power plants. And again, that is what I gathered from my conversation with the president, that he is not playing games here. He is not bluffing. He is going to hammer the Iranian regime if they do not sign on the dotted line. The choice is theirs in the days ahead.
Can you respond to, I know the Truth Social came.
This is not the regime. When you openly admit that the strike targets are bridges, tunnels, and power plants, like you're like the administration is readily admitting that the goal is not to destroy the Iranian regime or their military or anything like that. It's just to do terrorism. I find it so odd that we don't even look at these kinds of statements with like any critical lens whatsoever. Like the president keeps repeatedly saying he's going to do acts of terror over and over again, and a pliant media class doesn't treat that as a threat to do war crimes, a threat to do terror, but instead as a simple negotiations tactic. I don't know where we go from here, you know? I don't know how you feel like you're the good guy in this situation.
Came out and we didn't get an answer to the question of why you think J.D. Vance is not included in this negotiation team.
The short answer is we understand that the vice president is still directly involved in these conversations and consultations. The president just yesterday at the White House held a situational assessment in the Situation Room, gathering top cabinet officials, whether it was the Joint Chiefs Chairman, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, the vice president, and others. And we understand that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff was involved as well in that conversation. And so this is a full court press by the Trump administration. A variety of officials are involved at many different levels. The United States is preparing not just on the diplomatic front, but also on the military front. And as the president has made clear on Truth Social and in our call earlier today, he is prepared for a variety of outcomes. But we are looking at two outcomes here, either a diplomatic solution or military action.
Big decision. Trey Yingst,
great stuff,
great
Trey.
reporting out of Tel Aviv. Thank you, Trey.
Sounds like, by the way, that the whole country should be praying right now.
Indeed.
The whole country needs to pray right now for peace, for them to come to the table and this to end.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube. And spite of all this optimism that we've been hearing about from our correspondents from Donald Trump, an Iranian source has told Al Jazeera that Tehran believes the two sides are in fact on the verge of escalation. The source said there is inconsistency in Trump's statements and with what is actually happening on the ground. Let's head to Tehran now, to Ali Hashim. Ali, so that, of course, is a completely different take from that of Donald Trump of the United States.
Well, a lot of skepticism here in Tehran with respect to this sudden announcement by President Trump, especially that both sides weren't yet able to agree on the most crucial points, which are the enrichment of uranium, whether this is going to happen, it's going to be halted for a certain amount of years or indefinitely, or the other issue, which is the fate of the highly enriched uranium stockpile, 480 kilograms that are in one of Iran's destroyed nuclear facilities. So these main points were not agreed upon. The other issue, which is, or at least there is no agreement in principle on what they are going to discuss. The other issue, which is also very important to the Iranians, and this is why Tasnim news agency said that Iran is not sending a delegation to Pakistan unless the blockade on the strait and the blockade on the Iranian ports is lifted. So now what we are hearing is that the Pakistanis are trying to mediate a kind of goodwill escalation, de-escalation measure, whereas the United States will loosen its blockade on the Iranian ports, while Iran also will loosen its blockade to the Strait of Hormuz. So what we are dealing with right now is very complicated. The Iranian foreign minister and the Pakistani foreign minister had a phone call. Most probably the Pakistani foreign minister was inviting the Iranian foreign minister to attend alongside his team of experts and diplomats the next round of negotiations. Now, the main issue here that the Iranians could be very concerned of is that the meetings that could happen in Islamabad in the coming days could end up with announcing a kind of an agreement similar to the one that took place in Gaza, the one on Gaza, with no strict points and leaving the main unbridgeable, at least for now, or the main points of collision between both sides, such as the enrichment and the highly enriched uranium, till later. And also, and this is actually the most sensitive thing for the Iranians, and delaying the lifting of sanctions till later. So to Iran, this would mean an unended conflict, because still they will be paying the price of the situation. They will be under economic sanctions. And the only thing that would happen is that President Trump would take a deal, but an empty deal.
Ali, Iran's posture is certainly one of defiance, isn't it? Taking a defiant tone. But it must be under intense pressure.
Well, there's no doubt there is intense pressure, economic pressure. At the same time, the country here is in a situation of it's not moving. It's just stuck in a situation between no war and no peace. And with a 90 million population, with just a few months ago a protest that saw thousands killed, with a financial situation very dire. All these issues will, of course, put a lot of pressure on the system, but the system also is fighting what it describes as an imposed war. So it doesn't have much choices. It doesn't have the choice to surrender, and it doesn't have the choice to escalate at the same time.
Ali, thanks for that. Ali Hashim there in the Iranian capital.
The sky has cleared and the bombing has stopped. A sense of calm has filtered through the Iranian capital. But there's little joy in this city.
حالمون مثل غریقیه که برای چند ثانیه سرش رو از آب بیرون آورده تا فقط یک نفس عمیق بکشه. قبل از اون که دوباره به زیر کشیده بشه.
It's difficult to speak to people in Iran. The internet has been cut for the past 6 weeks, but a small number are trying to talk to us. They've managed to post on social media and send messages via the web.
صدای پرنده ها دوباره بلند شده و با تدی و کلایی اومدیم پیاده روی. زندگی دوباره برگشته.
The city is calmer after the news of ceasefire. Young girls without hijab are enjoying their latte macchiato under the sun, while black-veiled women wave their Iranian flag in the government-sponsored rallies at the main squares.
After a bombardment of 40 consecutive days, people in Tehran are emerging from the shadows to drink coffee, to reacquaint with friends. But a shaky ceasefire offers them little or no certainty. City residents have been sending us messages.
و بسیار هنوز هم نگرانم و حداقل بعد از این 40 روز ما میتونیم 2 هفته شاید بتونیم یکم شبها بخوابیم.
حالا هوا هم که دیگه خودت میدونی دیگه این بلا تکلیفیه و این تهدیدا و زدن زیرساخت و این دور بودن از خونه زندگی و تعطیلی کار و آینده نگران اینا همه وحشتناکه واقعا.
The Americans and the Israelis trained much of their firepower on the capital, a massive bombardment on a densely populated city. And the experience was captured by a Red Crescent paramedic called Ali. I wish someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Get up, it was a dream," he wrote in a message that accompanied this post. And residents have also been documenting the aftermath. This man is the owner of a Persian music school.
می‌خواستم آخرین صدایی که از آموزشگاهم بیاد صدای موشک و جنگ نباشه. آخرین صدای سازی باشه که توش نواختم. مرسی.
He then plays this instrument, a kamanche, in the ruins of his own school. It is a small act of defiance. That's been repeated in other parts of the city. The authorities claim that tens of thousands of civilian targets in Tehran have been destroyed. Here, professors at Shahid Beheshti University conduct classes outside the remains of an academic building. Far from threatening the regime, the US-Israeli bombing has arguably strengthened it. Here we see giant posters of the girls killed in a strike on a school in the city of Minab, a calamity that has prompted widespread horror. And the regime has sought to harness this outrage in pro-government rallies held nightly, while state media broadcasts messages from unlikely supporters.
دلیل نمیشه که اگه من حجاب ندارم سمت ایران نباشم. ایران وطن منه. ایران که وطن این همه آدمای مذهبی نیست. منم دارم تو ایران زندگی میکنم.
Women without headscarves pictured here backing the country's ultra-conservative leadership.
اگه قرار خونه منو بزنن منم باید توش باشم بمیرم حالا به شهادت برسم هرچی ولی ترجیح میدم ترک نکنم.
The regime's many critics now find themselves in a difficult position, stuck between a government they loathe and a war that...
How conservative is Iran? You got like 20 to 30% ultra-conservative fundies. And then the rest are not very conservative at all. But ultimately, the rest are not unified behind like an actual political movement either. So on the one hand, yeah, by the way, the conservatives are also very well educated too. Everyone is very well educated. That's the other side of this as well. It's not like the conservatives are like our MAGA, a bunch of fucking mouth-breathing hogs. They're just fundies. Like you see, Americans see those women wearing the burqas, wearing the hijab, and think to themselves like, oh, these must be like backwards people. Like, nah, those are like chemical engineers. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't even have to be mentioned, but I feel like I have to remind Americans that when you see a lady dressed like that, you probably have a lot of Orientalist opinions, but like they are in the government, they're a part of the Basij forces, they are petrochemical engineers and sometimes even drone manufacturers. Okay.
It's caused immense suffering.
مردم که واقعا دوست دارن این اتفاق بیفته اینا نمونن و همه امیدشون خیلی یا هر کسی که من میشناسم تو هر سطح و تو هر جایگاهی همینطوریه ولی واقعا این بلا تکلیفی خیلی اذیت کننده است.
For the people of this mega city, the sky itself is a source of fear. That's what 40 days of bombing does. We spoke to a resident called Layla by phone.
I need to use my pills. The drugs and pills in Iran are very, very expensive right now. You can't find fluoxetine, Acentra, citalopram. That's why I think most people are in the same situation as me.
Trapped between war and peace, by the bombs and a government that demands total obedience. It seems the residents of Tehran have nowhere left to go. John Sparks, Sky News.
Well, this is an unusual sight. We're in the middle of Jerusalem, and behind me is a pretty substantial protest, including a whole series of groups that come together to express the hatred of the government. They're not just
They still wave the Israeli flags, though.
anti-Netanyahu. These are also groups who say that democracy in Israel is under threat, and even a group of mothers of IDF soldiers protesting that they think Israel.
I will say this. Far less Israeli flags nowadays at those protests than ever before. Okay. Back in the day, all of the anti-Netanyahu crowd, whenever they protested on the streets of Israel, it would be fucking, they'd all be waving the Israeli flag. All of them. Okay. I have noticed a lot less Israeli flags being waved at these protests.
Israel has a track record of starting wars when it doesn't need to.
Israel prides itself as being the only democracy in the region, but these protesters insist their government is malign and say the world can see it.
They see our country already turning into a fascist dictatorship that hates all foreigners, that is ready to kill and go on for an unending war.
I mean, Netanyahu, who would say Israel has been surrounded by enemies and that it has to be strong in defense. You make enemies into allies. You make peace. You do diplomacy. You don't go to war time after time. Our prime minister has sworn that his vision of the future is that we will live forever by the sword. He said that, and I'm not willing to go that direction. Are you proud of being an Israeli at the moment?
No. No.
What is your emotion?
I feel that it's a country that has already gone quite a way towards an authoritarian regime that has committed crimes. So it does not make me proud.
The protest followed by both police and military. There were a few isolated scuffles. In a country where right-wing politicians dominate, many of these people feel their views go unheard.
We must stop these wars. There's endless wars. It's useless. It's only bringing us only disasters. Nothing good comes out of it.
We have to get to a peaceful solution. We have to get to some sort of a political solution. We have to talk to our neighbors. We have to talk to the Palestinians. We have to talk to the Palestinian citizens of Israel. And we definitely have to stop using force to solve everything.
Well, not everyone here is happy about these protests. Those group of people over there have been shouting abuse and jeering, so we're going to go and ask them why.
וביבי המלך וכל השאר זבל. כל השמאלנים זבל. הם שמאלנים, הם לא קשורים והם של אנשים וזה הכל, נקודה. זהו.
I love seeing fucking hogs in the wild. The hog universality theory remains to be true. Maariv, the Israeli public, which sent its sons and daughters into the line of fire and paid an unimaginable price in blood, sweat, and the destruction of homes, feels that no clear result has been achieved. The feeling is that they pay that the heavy price has been paid in full, but the product, real security, and the removal of the threat has not been provided. This is an erosion of national resilience, a situation in which the public begins to wonder whether its sacrifice has strategic purpose. On the other hand, on the Iranian side and its branches, the logic is completely opposite and discouraging. For the axis of evil, the concept of victory does not require the destruction of the IDF. It only requires the survival of the organization. The mere ability to survive the Israeli blow, to stay on its feet, and to force a powerful country like Israel to sign a ceasefire under the auspices of the superpowers is seen as a great success. This success immediately translates into a sense of victory that fuels the narrative of the resistance. We have defeated the Zionist military machine. This was the case with Hamas. This was what was happening now with Hezbollah. For them, every minute of ceasefire is a minute of reconstruction, strengthening, and planning for the next massacre. This is the colossal mistake of the West, and of Trump in particular. They try to apply the rules of the business world, a world of compromise, profit sharing, and striving for a middle ground, to a region where the game is zero-sum. In the Middle East, today's compromise is tomorrow's missile fuel. While the West seeks stability so that the markets will calm down, Iran seeks existence so that its ideology will prevail. For the Ayatollahs, time is the most precious resource. What a fucking psychotic thing to write, dude. God, like, just average Israeli prose in a Israeli newspaper is just straight up from the mouth of Adolf Hitler. Like, think about it. They're literally saying, like, we have to kill every Iran. Like, we have to destroy Iran. Every moment that we're not destroying Iran, every moment that they exist is a slight against us. Okay? The current ceasefire is not a political solution. It's a strategic recovery period that allows them to fill their depleted warehouses and prepare the infrastructure for the next October 7th, perhaps this time from the north. The ceasefire that was forced upon us is a glaring warning sign. It reminds us that Israel's security cannot rest on international promises or on deals by businessmen, however talented they may be. The responsibility for our fate rests solely on our shoulders. They're pissed off that America was like, bro, please stop murdering children in Lebanon for like a day. What? I think Kai Lentit is roasting you in this video. He is very funny. Their Discord server in the video is called #Pikers. I don't know why you're showing me this. I don't know who this guy is. But in any case, let's continue. I mean, I didn't invent monitoring the situation. I was actually making a meme about people who say that, but it's become a reality now.
ועכשיו יש הפסקת אש, ומרגיש ממש כולם מאוד, מצד אחד מברכים על השקט, וגם קצת מבולבלים, ומצד שני מאוד מאוד מאוכזבים. שום דבר לא הושג.
Yeah, they're literally mad. They're mad that like, oh, okay, the bomb stopped dropping on us, but also at the same time, like, we haven't murdered every Lebanese person in the South. So obviously, like, what is all this for? Like, we should be fucking, slaughtering the Lebanese population of southern Lebanon. We need more death. We need more violence. We need more destruction. It is so strange.
פשוט נשארנו באותו מקום שהיינו, לא להגיד לפני המערכה הנוכחית, לפני השביעי לעשירי. אנחנו באותה נקודה כל הזמן.
I think it's, as you say, the ceasefire, and probably will proceed it within, I don't know, the next couple of months, weeks, nobody knows. Hopefully, the next time we'll continue to move forward, and eventually peace will come to this area. I don't know when, but it will come.
I will answer you in the press. We were so close, but there were some differences over important issues, which United States actually decided not to abandon its maximalist position. So that was the reason that we decided to first finalize this framework and then move on to in-person meetings, I can say. So this is why that Field Marshal Asim Munir was in Tehran from Wednesday evening until Friday, and there were plenty of messages and meetings back and forth happened, and also texts was exchanged. We are still not there yet to move on to an actual meeting because there are issues that Americans yet have not abandoned their maximalist positions. I can tell you that Iran has no option just to stop aggressors and once forever. We are defending. We are defending. This was not our choice. This war was not our choice. It was unnecessary, unprovoked war of aggression started by Americans and Israelis in the middle of negotiation. And while they were just, conspiring behind the scene that, negotiations work well, and they were promising that there have been good and significant progress. Then they started surprise assassinations. They assassinated the head of state, martyred standing our leader in his office, and off-duty commanders, not in situation room, not in front line, but also in their offices. So this shows to what extent we have to be very careful and being ready for any scenario.
ولی من اینجا یه نکته رو میخوام بگم. اصلا اینجا به این وارد بشم. این به معنی این نیست که ما در قدرت نظامی از آمریکا قوی تریم. خب که 2 تا 4 تاست. معلوم آمریکایی‌ها پولشو از ما بیشتر، تجهیزاتشو از ما بیشتر، امکاناتشو از ما بیشتر. بس که اینا در دنیا جنایت کردن، چون همیشه کارشون تهاجمه، تجربهشون از ما بیشتر. رژیم صهیونیستی هم که نوکر و عمله اونها هست تو منطقه و برای منافعشون، دیدین که او جنگ قبل هم اشاره کردن که اگر در دولت از قبلی آمریکا که اگر اسرائیل هم نمی بود امروز باید یه اسرائیل در منطقه درست میکردیم. یعنی در واقع ژاندارم اوناست در اینجا میخواد کار خودش انجام میده. خب اونم از قدرت بالایی برخورداره. یه وقتی من میبینم مردم عزیز ما میگن که ما
That was Biden. My man pulling up Biden quotes. They said Israel is the gendarme, the military police of the United States in the region.
اونا رو نابودشون کردیم. نه، ما اونا رو نابودشون نکردیم. این رو بدونیم. ما در این جنگ برنده میدانیم و ما تونستیم. نگاه کنید اینجا این نکته مهمه که بدونیم. حتما تجهیزات و امکانات و پول در جنگ و در پیروزی مؤثره، ولی همیشه اتفاق نمیفته. ما در یک جنگ نامتقارن با اینا به گونه جنگ کردیم که با طراحی خودمون، با آمادگی خودمون دشمن رو به گونه اونا این رو داشتن، ولی قدرت طراحی و نحوه استفاده از این رو درست عمل نکردن. این که من میگم اونا از جهت راهبردی و استراتژیکی اشتباه تصمیم میگیرن اینجاست. مثلا شما نگاه کنید در رابطه با ملت ما اشتباه میکنن.
When the Sean Connery show up, it's so funny that you guys are saying that because they used to say that about Khomeini as well. Not Khamenei, but Ayatollah Khomeini. They used to say also looks like Sean Connery. New, Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya central headquarters says it will soon respond after confirming a U.S. strike on an Iranian commercial vessel and boarding of the ship by American Marines, according to IRGC-linked Fars News. The command accused the U.S. of violating the ceasefire and carrying out armed maritime piracy, saying American forces opened fire on a vessel in the Gulf of Oman, disabled its navigation system, and then deployed a number of its terrorist Marines onto the deck. It said Iran's armed forces will respond and retaliate for what it described as an act of banditry and aggression by the U.S. military. They already did. Ceasefire is over. Wait, isn't this literally from... They did already? They sent drones. Galibaf is back to posting. Vibe trading digital oil is like vibe hedging in treasuries during Hormuz risk off. Both share one house of cards that works on paper. Difference: oil at least has dated Brent. Treasuries, vibes all the way down. Yeah, you know the war efforts have restarted because they're memeing again. They're posting aggressively again. I had noticed a lack of posts, and the posts are back. Iran state-run Tasnim news agency, which is affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is claiming that the Iranian forces attacked some American military ships with drones in response to today's U.S. attack on the Iranian-flagged Tuska in the Gulf of Oman. The self-proclaimed greatest military force in the world became the leader of the pirates. American terrorist military forces attacked an Iranian container ship named Tuska, which was traveling from China to Iran in the Gulf of Oman a few hours ago. After the Americans attacked the ship, Iranian forces have also attacked some American military ships with drones. Oh, it wasn't even leaving the Strait of Hormuz. It was coming back. God, that is so cowardly. That is so... They couldn't hit a ship that was transiting through the Strait of Hormuz going to China, so they hit an empty ship instead that was coming back from China. Oh my God, we really are paper tigers. I swear to God. After the Americans attacked the ship, Iranian forces also attacked some American military ships with drones. Trump claimed a few hours ago that American terrorists have seized the ship. Iran had previously announced that it would retaliate against any American actions. They're afraid the Chinese are sending weapons. It could be. That could be the case. Syrians are reporting large number of Israeli aircrafts flying across southern Syria tonight, heading eastwards towards Iran. Oh, shit. Israel was begging for this moment. Like the destruction of the ceasefire conversation. Israel's trying to take Lebanon offshore gas dream. Israel moves to take control over Lebanon's offshore gas dream. Researcher Ahmed Baidoun says Israel's newly declared forward defense zone in southern Lebanon effectively folds the Qana gas field into its control, despite Lebanon's rights under the 2022 U.S. brokered maritime deal. Oh my God. Would you look at that? I mean, it's positively anti-Semitic, really, if you don't let them have it. I mean, it's just sitting there. It's sitting there waiting to be taken over by Israeli hands. What, do you not want the only Jewish state in the world to have additional gas fields? Like, I would never. It's positively anti-Semitic. Mike Huckabee said it's okay.
Here's my take.
How Trump's Iran approach is quietly fueling China's rise, says Fareed Zakaria. Let's take a look.
Something puzzling is happening on the world stage. The United States has been infuriating much of the world by being reckless, erratic, and lawless, launching
It was promised to Israel 3,000 years ago. It's in the Bible. The Bible said so. Do you hate every Jewish person on the planet?
unilateral military actions, roiling the global economy, upending alliances, and treating long-held norms as inconveniences. And yet China, the world's rising superpower, has not piled on with thunderous denunciations and proclaimed itself the responsible alternative to an unreliable America. Understanding why will help us better grasp Beijing's long game. I spent the last week in China and was struck by how many people there felt differently about this latest American war in the Middle East compared to the last major one. During the Iraq War, Chinese strategists seemed almost gleeful at the spectacle of America mired in the desert. This time, officials, think tank scholars, and business leaders were mostly bewildered by America's chaotic policy, worried about it, and deeply uncertain about what Trump might do next. Some of this is self-interest. China needs the oil and gas that pass through the Strait of Hormuz. More broadly, the country is not a rogue state like Russia. It understands that its growth depends on open sea lanes, functioning markets, and steady rules of the game. Chinese officials repeatedly told me, echoing Xi Jinping, that the...
I'm sorry. Calling Russia is a rogue state is fine, right? But we are also a rogue state. America and Israel are both rogue states here. Like, by those standards, there are two countries here that are invested in stability, regional stability and international stability. Iran is still playing by the rules. So is China. I think it's fair to call Russia a rogue state, but you got to also recognize that we are the rogue state.
The United States was taking the world back to the law of the jungle. It's less a moral critique than a strategic anxiety. In a globalized world, when the reigning hegemon becomes utterly unpredictable, it's bad for everyone.
Can you define rogue state for us? Yes, a state that behaves in a roguelike manner outside of the confines of international law. A state that says all of the international stability that was designed is for nothing. A state that just casts it all aside and engages in might makes right politics.
Chinese officials claim their country does not want to replace the United States. Its business leaders insisted that America remains the more innovative economy, even though America has soured on China.
For the record, America doing this makes even less sense. Because we wrote international law, and the framework that we have operated off of around the globe, that China operates off of, that every other country operates off of, is a framework that we designed that benefits us tremendously. So we're just fucking up the bag for ourselves for no real reason other than to abide by Israel's wishes.
China, those leaders continue to admire Silicon Valley, America's great universities, and the scale and sophistication of the U.S. market. China's strategy is to use this crisis to build its economic strength and global influence. China is doubling down on the frontier technologies that it believes will define the next era of growth: green energy, robotics, artificial intelligence applied to real industries, advanced manufacturing, and services. Its dominance in some of these sectors is already staggering. It produces 80% of the world's solar panels, about 60% of the wind turbines, and 75% of the batteries. It supplies 70% of all electric vehicles on the planet. China has used the last 3 economic shocks to further its dominance. During the pandemic, Chinese firms surged to supply much of the world with medical equipment. As the artificial intelligence boom swelled, China became central to its physical build-out. The metals, electrical equipment, batteries, cooling systems, and industrial components needed for data centers. Now the Iran war has produced a global scramble for new energy. Here again,
Iran is 2 days away from making a nuke. Only way to stop them is to subscribe with Twitch Prime, or depending on your associations, the only way to accelerate the process is by subscribing with a Twitch Prime for free or for $6, or gift subs to others. The Piker Broadcasting Service, as always, is sponsored by you, the people, for you, the people. It's the People's News, the People's Broadcasting Service, PBS, Piker Broadcasting Service, for tomorrow's news today. Trita was on CNN. Oh, shit. Nice. After we're done with Fareed's take, we'll do it. Rug pull the banks. Thank you for the 10 gifted subs. 20 gifted subs, as a matter of fact. Thank you. 30 gifted subs. Holy shit.
China is the indispensable power. It dominates the green technologies, solar, wind, batteries, electric vehicles that countries will need to reduce dependence on imported oil and gas.
I saw this.
Beijing turns these industrial strengths into influence. It offers financing, infrastructure, and supply chains. It locks
Balua Jr. Hype train just started. Balua Jr., thank you for the 10 gifted.
countries
Hype train
into
level 3
Chinese-made
achieved.
systems. It shows governments that America brings volatility while China brings equipment, credit, and continuity. From 2000 to 2025, Beijing financed projects and ports in 90 countries around the world. Last month, Beijing even offered Taiwan a deal of sorts. Accept peaceful reunification, and the mainland will guarantee your energy security. China's next expansion of influence is crucial. Xi recently made explicit Beijing's ambition to turn the renminbi into a global reserve currency. One former official explained how China would steadily expand its bond market and financial infrastructure so that if investors came to see America as risky, they would have an alternative. Recent weeks have brought an obscure but ominous sign. Institutions like the World Bank and the European Investment Bank have been able to issue debt at rates essentially as low as those offered by U.S. Treasuries. This threatens to end what has been called America's exorbitant privilege of having the world's reserve currency. If that erodes, America will get a very painful shock when its government and its households can no longer borrow so much so cheaply. China is using this moment to burnish its reputation, but mostly to build its power. If the correlation of forces moves steadily in its favor, if America continues to squander its global influence, one day Beijing might decide that after all, it does want to take on the mantle of the world's leading power. And at that point, it will be too late for Washington to do anything about it. On Friday, Iran announced...
America is bouldering in that direction. We are doing seemingly everything in our power to forcibly redesign society in this way. I think we have forced China's hand. I think that China if left to his own devices, would not want to become the hegemon now. But we are basically causing China to take over this responsibility.
It was reopening the Strait of Hormuz. But on Saturday, it said the strait was closing again due to breaches of trust by the United States. Just hours ago, President Trump responded with fury on his Truth Social account, calling it a total violation of our ceasefire agreement. He also said that a U.S. delegation will be in Pakistan tomorrow evening for a second round of negotiations, and said that if Iran does not accept a deal, then the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. Now there are only 3 days left before the U.S.-Iran ceasefire is set to end. An Iran's top negotiator says the U.S. and Iran are still far from a final agreement. Joining me now is Vali Nasser. He is a professor of international affairs and Middle Eastern studies at Johns Hopkins University, and has author of an important book, The Grand Strategy of Iran, which in many ways, I would argue, predicts a lot about what has happened. Why is Iran being so intransigent in the face of these extraordinary threats that Trump has made?
I mean, first of all, Iran thinks that through the 40 days war, they did make some strategic gains that they want to consolidate. And they also think that they can actually get a final deal with President Trump if they stand their ground. But the most important thing here is an issue of trust. I think in Islamabad, the opportunity was for the two sides to build trust that then would allow them to resolve things. But after the talks ended, I think trust has actually collapsed even further between Iran saying it will open the straits, the United States not lifting the blockade, and then President Trump issuing a series of tweets that the Iranians say were false. And
it is pretty interesting that after 52 fucking days, almost all of these guys who in the beginning they were like, oh, Iran fucked up big time now, have been retreating back into this much more restrained approach to American foreign policy. I find that to be rather odd. 52 days ago, everybody was like, oh, that you done did it now, Iran. You done did it now. We're going to destroy your fucking stockpiles. We're going to fuck you guys up. I'm not saying Vali Nasser was one of those people. I'm talking about Fareed Zakaria and numerous others.
Portrays an image like Iran has already surrendered even before there's a final deal. So I think what we see as Iranian intransigence is also...
Why does Trump focus on bridges? Because he can't do anything about the missile silos. He can't do anything about the missile cities. So he has to keep punishing the civilian population. It's a very Israeli style of waging war. It's what you do when you're weak.
Iran's deep distrust that this is all a ruse, that like what it happened in Geneva, the U.S. is setting them up for something bigger to come.
The Geneva point is important because my understanding is the Iranians thought they were negotiating in good faith in Geneva, and in the middle of it, Trump starts the war. And so there is specifically a lot of lack of trust with the two negotiators, Witkoff and Kushner, correct?
Yes, those two in particular, and especially in Geneva, the last round, because Iran did put forward very new things that it hadn't done before. It went much farther than it had gone before. And what it got instead was bombing. In other words, it's not like the U.S. said, okay, these are great concessions. I want you to concede even more, and I'm going to be tougher until you concede. It just went straight to war. And it had done this once before. When a war happened in June, they were also in the middle of negotiations.
With Witkoff and Kushner.
With Witkoff and Kushner. So the Iranians are extremely suspicious that maybe this whole Islamabad exercise is theater as the United States builds its forces in the region, sort of learns the lessons of the first 40 days, and Trump may go back to war again. So, and also this whole talk about Iran has made concessions is a way of actually creating confusion in Tehran and breaking ranks within Iran.
My own view on that is that Trump is just talking down the stock market. He knows that every time he says things like, we're close to a deal, they've surrendered, the stock market doesn't collapse, which is one of his goals. Is there new leadership in Iran and how to think about that issue of these new people? Are they divided? Are they, are they more hardline?
I believe there is a cohesive leadership. In other words, the top 4 or 5 people are all have known each other, have worked together, are from the same ilk in Iran. They are all Mujtaba Khamenei's people, and he included. So it's not like you have a coalition at the top. You have the same ilk there. They're much more hawkish leaders in Iran. They are not restrained in waging aggressive war. But they've also shown that they are willing to lean into negotiations and diplomacy as well.
What does a more hardline mean?
Means that they are willing to take actions that perhaps...
Oil futures, for your information, are up $5 to $6 currently. Dude, make it more expensive. Make it more expensive. What am I going to do? I'm just going to grind fucking harder, baby. Make the price of an oil barrel go up to $200. Guess what? I'm just going to fucking Sigma on my grind set. I'm on my Sigma grind set shit. You don't understand, bro. You don't understand. Make that shit 150. Fuck it. 200, baby. I'll be out there grinding extra hard. Okay? Fuck it. Make it $300 a barrel. I'll be working that hard. Okay? I'll be working 3 times as hard, baby. Make it $250 for America's birthday. Fuck it. Says the dude with an electric car. Shut the fuck up, broski. Okay, calm down. I do have an electric vehicle. But that's not the point. The point is, I'm grinding. I'm grinding super fucking hard, dude. Because that's a small price that we're all willing to pay, right? As long as Israel gets its war goals across, right? I mean, the alternative is what? Being called an anti-Semite. I mean, I would never. I would hate that. Okay? Yeah, sure. Maybe you're paying 50 extra bucks when you're buying groceries. Sure, maybe there will be some shortages. Maybe you can't go on that fucking trip because now jet fuel costs have also skyrocketed. But real patriots grind. And when you're grinding extra hard, when you're doing additional laps on the Uber, when you were, working a second gig economy job, remind yourself that you are going through this process for the greatest nation on the planet. Not the United States of America, of course. That's the second greatest nation on the planet. The number 1 nation on the planet, Israel. Okay? So just remind yourself when you're putting in the laps, okay? When you're working hard, not hardly working, but working hard to make ends meet, remind yourself that you're doing this for a higher fucking purpose. Just tell yourself, Am Israel Chai. This is a self-soothing mantra for all the champions, for all the patriots around the world. Okay? Ben Rhodes, markets absurdly disconnected from the vast majority of people. Traders place bets on currencies and oil prices while people pay more for everything and fear losing jobs to the AI that sustains the markets. Again, Ben Hamas Rhodes, not appreciative enough of Israel's military goals, which is the death and destruction of a country with thousands of years of history, culture, and also 93 million people. Ben Hamas Rhodes doesn't appreciate that. We do. Here at the HasanAbi broadcast, we appreciate the finer things in life, like the nation state of Israel, chocolate hummus made by Sabra, and pizza, which was also invented by Israel. That's right. Tacos, another Israeli invention. I wake up every morning and I thank God. I thank God. Benjamin Netanyahu, that's who my God is. I thank him. I have an altar dedicated to him, and I think to myself, thank you for existing. Thank you for doing all the best things. I will work extra hard this month to make ends meet. And you should too.
Perhaps the previous supreme leader was...
I think to myself, Israel, tiny nation, size of New Jersey. And I think maybe it should be the size of New Jersey plus, I don't know, maybe Pennsylvania, right? I mean, Israel, tiny nation, size of New Jersey. It's too tiny. It should be larger. That's what I think to myself.
Not willing to take. For instance, attacking Iran's neighbors in the way they have done. Be willing to escalate with the United States. And as one of the advisors to Mujtaba Khamenei said, it's not an eye for an eye, it's an eye, a head, a hand, a neck. You know, as we sort of, if you provoke, we'll provoke even further. And so this is a very different approach than the previous supreme leader who responded to an American attack on Iran's nuclear facilities with a symbolic sending of missiles into Qatar. But at the same time, I think they've been willing to go further than perhaps the previous supreme leader was willing to go in terms of negotiating with the US. But domestically, you know, the factions in Iran are still the same. The regime still has to manage its base, has to manage public opinion in Iran. It has asked Iranians, in particular its own people, to sacrifice enormously for this war. So when President Trump says, oh, Iran has already given up everything, even before there's a signature, it actually creates a crisis for them about how do they manage perceptions within Iran, which is quite significant.
We're joined now by Democratic Congressman Roque.
What's really funny about this is that while we're having this conversation, here's what the European allies are apparently worried about, according to Reuters. European allies fear an inexperienced U.S. negotiating team is pushing for a swift headline-grabbing framework deal that with Iran that could entrench rather than resolve deeper problems, diplomats with past experience dealing with Tehran said. They worry Washington, eager to claim a diplomatic win for President Donald Trump, could lock in a superficial agreement on Iran's nuclear program and sanctions relief, then struggle through months or years of technically complex follow-on talks. The concern isn't that there won't be an agreement, said a senior European diplomat, one of 8 who spoke to Reuters, who have previously worked on nuclear file or continue to do so. It's that there will be a bad initial agreement that creates endless downstream problems. European cucks are out here being like, oh, the agreement will be too sweet for Iran. That's what we are worried about here. That you know, they'll deliver something for Iran that's too good, and we don't want that. It's like, okay, man, well, enjoy fucking $7 million barrels of oil, okay? Fuck it. Like, what am I supposed to say to this? When I hear stuff like this, and I don't think this is like the perspective shared by many in Europe, okay? But like, when I hear anyone that is involved in any way, shape, or form within the EU bureaucracy, the bureaucratic structure, that still operates as some of the most loyal servants of America and therefore Israel, I think to myself, your people should depose of you. Like, your people should, you know, tar and feather your ass. What the fuck are you saying? It's unbelievable. None of them asked for this. You are refusing to see the worst outcomes here for some fucking weird reason. It's just like, this is pure madness, dude. You only arrive at positions like this if you're just like an insane person. Your primary focus here is just America and Israel's goals, like achieving those goals no matter who suffers as a consequence. European natural gas futures surging in early Asian trading. European gas rises as much as 9.8%. Benchmark futures rose as much as 11%. Brent oil jumps 7.3% to 96.94 per barrel. We're going to go across the $100 line again. It reminds me of the people that always say that are American, but many of them are also NATO enjoyers on the timeline that live in European countries that always say, oh, the Houthis are going to find out why we don't have healthcare. It's like, bitch, you live in France. What the fuck do you mean? You already have healthcare. You're LARPing as an American who doesn't have healthcare. Okay? That's unbelievable. That's number one. Okay? Number two, if you're an American who's saying like, oh, you're going to find out why we don't have healthcare. Like, dude, you don't have healthcare. Shouldn't you be more mad about that? Who gives a fuck if we're able to like militarily dominate the Houthis, which ironically enough, we are, turns out, not capable of doing that anyway. And we're certainly not capable of doing that to the IRGC, as we found out in Operation Epstein's epic Fortnite fail. So what are we doing this for? I just don't understand it. It's an exercise in futility, an exercise in belligerence. It makes no damn sense.
Kana of California, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Always good to be here.
So I know you've obviously been adamantly opposed to this war in the first place. What do you make of this latest development, though, another round of peace talks?
Well, they said they want to escalate to de-escalate. They've escalated to devastation. I mean, you have the Pope lecturing America about possible war crimes. You have the president, as you pointed out, threatening to destroy all power plants. I didn't think we would ever get to that point. You have the Strait of Hormuz that is now blocked. This never happened before the war. What have we achieved? Gas is up from $2.30 to $4. You have now Iran having a more hardline regime, as we just heard, and all our allies like UAE being hit. I mean, we've created devastation, and we're being lectured by the Pope.
But let me ask you, you've called the war, I think I have this correct, the biggest blunder in American foreign policy in the 21st century. If this gets to a resolution, I mean, if they actually, and I know that's a big if, but if they actually get to a resolution where Iran has given up its nuclear program and, you know, there is a peace deal, maybe even a peace deal with Lebanon, are you prepared to revise that and say that they actually got something out of it and it wasn't a blunder?
If we actually achieve something, but the enriched uranium is still there. We have a more hardline regime there. Khamenei Jr. actually wants to develop nuclear weapons. Does anyone believe that we actually have more leverage over the Strait of Hormuz? We have less. China has more influence in Iran. And we've lost our entire moral credibility. We have a president of the United States threatening to wipe out Iranian civilization, and people think it's normal? And then you have a situation where our troops are at risk, where a president who campaigned on peace is spending now $400 billion to spend more money on these wars. Why aren't we spending that on healthcare here, jobs here, childcare here? Why aren't we addressing the needs of the American people? I'm Team America. He seems to be more obsessed.
Why does Roe look younger? Bro, every day that he spends on mainstream media shitting on Israel and demanding that America truly engage in a more isolationist framework is a day where he just reverse ages. I swear to God. Yeah, he's just he's capturing all the power, dude.
With the Middle East.
So
he's doing
let
it.
Let me ask you about Israel. You were one of 40, I mean, you're not in the Senate, but there were 40 Senate Democrats who voted to halt the sale of military equipment to Israel, something you agreed with clearly. Is the Democratic Party no longer a pro-Israeli party?
We're a party that believes in two states and peace. But let me tell you what we're not for. We're not for aid to Israel. They've got a $45 billion defense budget. Why are we giving them money? Why aren't we providing it for health care here? Why aren't we providing it for child care here? By the way, that's not just an issue on the Democratic Party. You look at Republican voters under 50, they agree with me. And then you look at what the devastation was in Gaza. Why aren't we doing the Arab peace plan, which, by the way, the UAE foreign minister has supported? Of two states, you have a Palestinian state and which is demilitarized, and an Israeli state. That's what we are for. We should be for peace, and we should be for justice in that region.
But that seemed to be a big moment to see the vast majority of Democrats in the Senate say no more military sales right now to Israel.
Well, what they said is no more bulldozers that are destroying Palestinian villages. It's unjust. I mean, the young people in this country, when I met Netanyahu years ago, I said to him, Mr. Prime Minister, you may have won the battle, you've lost the war, because you've lost the next generation in America. We don't think you're acting morally. We have a sense that people in Palestine, they deserve justice. They deserve a state. And yes, we need to have a secure Israel, but not an Israel led by Netanyahu, who killed 70,000 people in Gaza. Not an Israel that is going to be raining bombs in Beirut, and not a prime minister who's sitting in our situation room. Let me tell you what a Democratic president's never going to do. An Israeli prime minister is not going to be sitting in our situation room telling the American president what to do. Only Americans will be in that situation room.
You went further than even most of your Democratic colleagues. You called for a stop of funding for defensive weapons to Iran, including Iron Dome, which is something you had supported. I remember you and I spoke about it on this show not all that long ago. You said it was something that protected not just Israelis, but also Palestinians.
I am for the Iron Dome technology. I'm glad UAE has it. I'm glad Israel has it.
But you don't think that we should give it to Israel anymore?
Why can't they afford it with $45 billion? Even Rahm Emanuel agrees with me. I mean, why are we subsidizing one of the richest countries in the world? They have health care for all their people. Why aren't we putting that money in our communities for our jobs? Do I want them to have Iron Dome? Absolutely. I want any country to have Iron Dome to protect their citizens. But the free ride is over. They're not going to be getting American tax dollars, and they're certainly not going to be dictating to the American president. The American president will call the shots.
And very quickly, it's an election year in Israel. If Netanyahu is removed and he faces a tough re-election battle, new leader in Israel, does that change your view on this?
It doesn't change my view on aid. It does change my view about how we will cooperate or not. I mean, they should recognize that this relationship is going to depend on them fighting for justice, recognizing a Palestinian state, working towards peace, and actually not insulting the American public and the American president. I mean, the American people understand that we have gotten into wars in the Middle East. They're tired of it. They're tired of our money going there. They want us to focus on the economy here at home.
All right, Congress.